at one point, Katie's like, well, what about my screen time?
But you can't, because if you incorporate the laws of robotics, she can't go on a murderous rampage and kill
If
people.
the laws get screwed up through that malfunction, massacre of android. This is the beginning of Terminator, dog.
Yeah, M3GAN 3.0 is essentially Terminator. Like, M3GAN has become Skynet.
Welcome to We're Too Literary, the show where we identify as experts.
But we're not.
As we deep dive into the world of cinema, uncovering plot holes, dissecting character arcs, laughing at the absurdities, and spoiling the shit out of everything you love and hold dear. I'm your host, Kenny.
And I'm Jonathan. And each week we'll take a critical yet humorous look at both the classics and the latest releases. Whether you're a film fanatic or love a good laugh, join us as we navigate the twists and turns of movie magic gone awry and give you our ideas on how we'd like to do it.
We just too literary.
Too literary.
Welcome back, everybody, to another week of We're Too Literary. This week, we're bringing you a little bit of AI magic.
It was magic, all right.
But not in the sense of, you know, the AI we talk about today. Not Chat GPT.
What are you talking about?
Not none of that.
I'm pretty sure this movie takes place like next week.
God, could it?
No,
That would
not
no.
even close.
The
But it tried
timeline
to
on it was
make
so
it
fuzzy.
feel like it. Yeah, it was very fuzzy.
Well, we're talking about M3GAN with a three.
Yes, with the
three.
With the three or with the three?
This movie is a little bit of a throwback. It came out in 2022 as opposed to this year, which I think a lot of what we've talked about so far this year has been from this year.
Yeah.
So
a good portion. Although we did do Dante's Peak and Volcano.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, that's true. We did do some throwbacks then.
Those are throwbacks.
Those are real throwbacks. Those are 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say.
You're making us old, man. You're making us old.
It's a weird feeling knowing that the 90s is kind of old now.
Ouch.
It hurts me too. Don't worry. I'm not.
Right here.
Yeah, right here. We're talking about M3GAN. And let me tell you, this movie was something. It was fun. For not being a fan of much in the way of horror films and even slasher flicks for that matter, I liked this one, and that's weird for me to say.
Why is it weird? I mean, it was, like you said, it was a really fun movie. It was entertaining.
Yeah.
It wasn't over the top. I think it's probably what was enjoyable about it. It had good suspense, had good violence, so to speak, and gore, but it wasn't like just excessive. There wasn't, blood splatters everywhere and entrails dripping down walls. There was a pretty grotesque ear scene, but other than that,
yeah, and subdued. Even that wasn't so bad in my mind. As far as there was a movie I watched a long time ago. That sounds weird to say. It was like in the 2000s, I want to say, but anyway,
that's a long time ago, buddy.
It was a movie called Strange Wilderness. And there's a scene in that movie where I think it was Steve Zahn, his character, a rooster or an ostrich, I don't know. It was some kind of bird, gets its mouth on and around his member, and they pull the bird away from him, and it stretches across the screen. And mind you, this was a movie that I was like, this seems like it'd be really funny. I want to rent it. This was back when I was still watching movies with my folks on a regular basis.
Ooh,
and yeah,
buddy.
Anyway, it stretches across the screen. And on it, that was the first thing that came to my mind when it came to the kid getting his ear pulled, was it stretched way too far for it to be realistic in my mind.
I won't lie. I sat there watching that scene, and I went through me. I'm like, can it stretch that much? No, it doesn't stretch that much.
It does not.
And in the movie, it's just like
it's stretching like if you were to take a fruit roll up and just like try and peel it apart, and eventually it breaks, but like it felt like a fruit roll up anyway. So that was honestly one of the most grotesque moments of the movie by comparison to a lot of stuff out there, it really wasn't that bad. And to actually mention ahead of time here, we unintentionally watched the unrated cut. We
We did.
I thought we were going into the theatrical version, but no, it was the unrated cut. And frankly, the differences between the two really weren't much. But
No,
before
they're
getting
pretty
into
minimal.
that, we'll give you a really quick. Here's what this movie was. If you don't already know, I mean, this is 2 years old now. If you don't know, that's fine. But if you, if you know, then you know.
If you know, you
So
know.
the official synopsis from the M3GAN movie team was: when Gemma suddenly becomes the caretaker of her orphaned 8-year-old niece Katie, Gemma's unsure and unprepared to be a parent. Under intense pressure at work, Gemma decides to pair her M3GAN prototype with Katie in an attempt to resolve both problems, a decision that will have unimaginable consequences.
Unimaginable.
It's an okay synopsis. It is, but at the same time, it's
What? Generic? Not
yeah,
generic.
yeah,
I mean,
no, yeah. I mean, we're expecting the unimaginable consequences. Where else is this going to go? Is this going to be some wholesome movie like?
well, where else does a movie go when it like takes new emergent technology and just comes up with whatever shit it wants to?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. I mean, but I really couldn't imagine how this would have been anything other than like a sci-fi thriller. I mean, and that's where this movie kind of started off genre-wise, was a psychological thriller with sci-fi elements that eventually leaned into more of a slasher film when it became the
Mhm.
unrated cut. But uh, from everything that I gathered on it, it was purely for the fact that they went from deaths being off screen and left to the imagination to deaths being on screen and a little bit more violent, but not really that much more violent.
No, it was not that much more violent. And honest, I thought it was a good balance. Like I saw enough and I didn't see too much. You know,
Yeah.
like the uh the death scene with the pressure washer. I'm glad we didn't watch like the skin melting off and shit. That would have been I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't I don't have a difficult time watching that stuff, but I didn't need to see it. Like it fit with the movie. So I was happy with that.
Yeah. And if there's anything that I've kind of learned about myself as we've ventured into more horror style films and everything, is that really where I take issue and have a harder time watching it is when it is actually like the slasher that goes into, kind of body horror and mutilation.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need that, because it's over the top. It's too much. I appreciated, even in the unrated cut of M3GAN, I appreciated the level of like, they didn't go too far with it. It was
Mhm.
still, I didn't feel like I needed to look away from the screen so much when she absolutely blasts the neighbor with pesticides that apparently are face melting worthy. You do see her face like start to look a little
Yeah.
disfigured, but it doesn't linger. It doesn't stay
No.
there for very long. You just know that she's fucking dead.
Correct. Well, it wouldn't have added anything other than
Yeah.
watch, some gore and torment. I mean, what we saw was plenty, I thought.
Yeah.
And, backing up like slightly more, like I'm glad we didn't watch her kill the dog. We know the dog is dead, but we didn't watch it. And I don't need to see, cruelty to animals.
Right. And I would almost argue myself that there's like a certain level of the goal is not to make you scared as much as it's meant to make you feel like the depravity of the situation, and feeling just that weird and uncomfortable sinking feeling in the bottom of your stomach, where it's just like, it's not so much that you're afraid, but you just feel hopeless. And that's not a feeling that I like to enjoy just randomly when I want to. you know,
Yeah.
I don't mind the idea of just being a little frightened about something. And so, some classics like The Ring, The Grudge, um, those are the first two coming to mind here. But like, those were a couple of movies from back in the
Yeah.
back in the early days of me exploring horror movies, that those were fun in the sense that it just kind of like gave you a little bit of like, ooh, oh, that happened. Ah, you're kind of jumping at it or whatever, and not necessarily being like, oh God, I'm not going to turn off the lights in my house for the next 4 days. Like I could go to bed at night.
That's
you
right.
know,
I want to
yeah,
say I've mentioned this before, but like the only movie that ever did that to me was watching Leprechaun as a child.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was uncomfortable. I mean, I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, so that was not a good choice.
And I think for me, it was probably, weirdly enough, it was probably Blade that kind of left me a little traumatized as a kid, mainly for the end scene in the climax of the movie, in the final fight, when he's going up against the big bad vampire. He throws a bunch of darts into him that cause him to expand and get like super gross looking, and then he fucking explodes, and I was like, well, childhood ruined. Yeah, that
Good.
that actually,
Ruin it early.
it,
Yeah.
it messed me up for a while. And I mean, that was just Blade. So like you can obviously take from that what you will, and understand that I am just not, this is not my genre really.
No. And yet I keep making you do it.
Hey,
Although
and
to be
and
fair, you brought this one to me. You
yes,
had
that's
already
true.
watched it.
Well, and I think I brought Late Night with the Devil to you as well.
Yeah,
I think
you
I
did.
think those were both that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try. Well, and to be fair, Sierra, my partner, was the one who really was like, I want to watch Late Night with Devil, and I was like,
Okay.
I'm just gonna have to lean into this at some point, so I might as well lean into it now. So I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna go into this with an open mind and try to come out of it without being too freaked out. And I ended up loving that movie. It's
I did as well.
probably one of my favorite spooky
Yeah.
movies I've seen in a long
If you
time.
haven't
So
watched that episode, you should definitely go watch that episode. I think
yeah,
it's one of our better ones.
yes, for sure. And I really enjoyed that one a lot. That was a fun one to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as M3GAN goes, I
Yeah.
the synopsis we gave you guys is pretty much
Well,
all you need to know.
yeah. New week, new episode. We're going to do a little differently this week. We're going to, instead of spending a half hour breaking down the movie for you, we're just going to jump in to kind of what we do differently and work our way through it.
Yeah, exactly. So, starting off with one of your points that we kind of discussed a little bit ahead of time is, this feels like the near future, but they never really tell us when in the near future it is.
Agreed. And I think for me, it needed that because it feels like like I said earlier, it feels like it's next week, kind of near future. But at the same time, she's fucking making a little girl android with some complexity to it. Or to go a little bit further and pull it, she makes fucking this giant robot Bruce while she's in college.
Yeah,
Like, that doesn't make sense if it fucking is happening next week or even next year. You can't just throw Bruce together in your college dorm running down to the Radio Shack. You remember the Radio Shack? Doesn't fucking exist anymore.
yeah, no, that's been gone for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and wait, did she mention Radio Shack, or is that just a
No, that was
okay?
that's
All
me,
right,
pulling out my inner childhood.
yeah, all right, cool, cool, cool. There was one other thing. Yeah, okay. Oh,
Yes.
that's not what I thought it was. Okay, we'll not worry about that. I
Yeah.
just know that there's been a few things lately that have come up, and I don't remember which ones exactly off the cuff. But having a date set in the movie is fun in and of itself, because it gives people something to look forward to in the future, right?
Mhm.
And I, again, not off the cuff, and I'm sure it's going to take longer than I want to actually look it up and find it, but I know that there have been some things that have come up recently in like the last few years that have been like moments in the movies where they were like, this happened in this year, right? I think there was a Star Trek one not too long ago where it was like, this was the year that we supposedly figured out warp travel, and we've
Yeah.
passed that
Well,
point now, and now we're sad that we don't have warp travel.
no.
And
I mean, you're yes and no. Or
or
getting
maybe it
my
was
inner
just that
geek
like,
out and getting off track. What just recently happened is the Deep Space Nine episode where Cisco and his crew go back in
Thank you.
time to August 2024.
Thank you.
And
That's
like,
exactly the one I was trying to think of.
yeah, I think it's like San Francisco and shit's just real bad for everybody.
Yep.
I think warp travel is like the 2070s, maybe?
Oh, okay. So that's further down the line. Either way, I'm
Yes,
still
yes.
sad we don't have it.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Okay. Well, you Google that. The the fact that it wasn't quite set with an actual date in the near future that we could have like played off of, I thought that would have been a nice touch to just be like, hey, now we can say that, 10 years down the line, this is when this movie happens. And we could see whether or not we've advanced
I
that far in AI.
2063
2063. Okay.
was was the first time drive was used. Star Trek First Contact. God damn it. I just lost it. Where'd it go?
Yeah. That's first contact. Yep.
21st, yeah, 21st century. Yeah, 2063. That's correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and actually, I watched that movie not that long ago as well. But
I do like that movie. It's a good one.
out of all the Star Treks, yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones. So, without having a date to really run off of, you just kind of assume we're in the near future there. And I take a lot of issues with the fact that we are in this future world. And the number one thing that really doesn't get touched on or considered, or where the hell are the safety protocols, man? Where in the hell are the obvious, if this,
Hey, Asimov doesn't exist in this universe.
why not? If okay, so we're
Okay,
gonna jump ahead.
do you think Boston Dynamics? Yeah. Do you think they're programming the three laws of robotics into their robots? Do you think Elon Musk is putting that into his robot? That probably infringes on some free speech aspect, I'm sure.
The fact that he's made so many references to like Orwellian stories and such, I would hope that he would put Asimov's rules into his AI. I would hope that Boston Dynamics would do so as well, because it is a warning to the future. These were written in the 70s, 80s, somewhere in there, like, or earlier than that even. Probably, like, Asimov's iRobot was the original, not the fucking movie. We know the movie.
Correct. So, Asimov was like 50s through 70s.
Okay. But Asimov's iRobot book. Oh shit, that one was clear back in the 50s. My bad. All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most of the shit was written quite a while ago.
In that case, it was a warning to the future. He was like, if you don't incorporate these rules into your AI, you're going to have a bad time.
Agreed. Well, what they probably did was burn the books and then moved on.
Yeah. Well, that part of this movie, and this is something I would definitely be like, as we get into how we would kind of change everything here, that is something I would absolutely be like, let's change the direction of this being about like Gemma having a moment of, I want to be successful at my career, to being more of like I'm going to be a responsible toy maker. I'm going to make sure that there are safety protocols in place for the kids who are going to be using this AI doll that is lifelike, life size, and when it's lifelike and life size, it's probably going to be able to try and kill you.
Yeah. Well,
so safety protocols. I'll die on this horse.
And you're welcome to. I'm going to challenge you though, because going that route, you're gonna have to do a lot to make it into still this horror thriller of a murderous AI toy.
Sure. So, and I will.
Okay.
So let's do a how we're doing it differently as we go through what happened kind of in the
Let's do
movie,
it.
point to point here. So it's like the movie starts off with a commercial, which
I
was a fun
love the
touch.
commercial. I love the
Yeah.
commercial. I won't lie. Like, so Maggie started watching this with me. Eventually, about the dog point in the movie, I had to stop and go to a different room because she wasn't going to handle that shit well.
Yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, the commercial comes on and she's only half paying attention, knowing that we're going to watch a movie. And she's like, "What the fuck is this? Why are we? Why is there a commercial? What the fuck is going on?" And I'm just
Right.
like, I fucking loved it. It was so good. It was entertaining as shit.
The Purrpetual Petz.
Yeah.
They were like,
A really creepy next level Furby.
I was gonna say they were creepy Furbies, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Like it was a play on a Furby, and I appreciated that because I hate Furbies. They're fucking creepy little gremlins that I just can't stand. Sierra loves them. She's got like 3 of them in her office, and I'm just like, I
No.
hate those things.
Fuck it.
And the Purrpetual Pets were just like an offshoot of that, but just as creepy. Like they didn't try to shy away from it being.
No.
They
No,
didn't try to make it better. They made it
They
equally as
up-leveled it.
awful.
You
Yeah.
virtually play with the fucking thing and feed it, and then it shits in real life.
Yep, I wasn't about it, but the commercial was great. I actually think that was a perfectly fine thing to queue up with, to lean into what it is that Gemma does as a character, like what her backstory kind of is and everything. And I also just wanted to touch on the tagline of the movie was friendship has evolved. Friendship has evolved was the tagline. And I really think the tagline should have been, as probably cliche as it sounds, parental supervision recommended. Because a good chunk of this movie, it's just Katie and M3GAN unsupervised doing their thing because Gemma's off being a workaholic and not paying attention to Katie.
And see, I think I would combine the two. Parental supervision has evolved. Because really, that's what this fucking toy is. It's a replacement for fucking parental supervision. It's going to be the one being like, put your fucking drink on a goddamn coaster, you little bitch, or I'm going to backhand you.
Which I loved it. So there's a montage at one point during the movie of Katie and M3GAN going back and forth with like the different activities throughout the day and how M3GAN's like encouraging her for better behavior.
And that little girl is gross. Fucking doesn't flush, doesn't wash her hands every goddamn time.
And yet she has a screen time early on in the movie. So a plot premise that sets everything up is that her parents die in a car accident that she's actually in. Like Katie's in the back of the car with her perpetual pet that's apparently frustrating her parents for whatever reason, because I guess it's a little mouthy gremlin. And she's also got her like iPad and she's like doing something there. And her parents are like, what about her screen time? And then later on, it's mentioned after like the accident happens and Katie's with Gemma now. I'm going to get those names mixed up because for whatever reason, I just felt like the kid's name made more sense to be Gemma. I don't know why, but anyway.
I like Gemma as an adult.
Yeah, it's fine. I keep getting them confused. With Gemma and Katie together, at one point, Katie's like, well, what about my screen time? And she's like, Gemma's response was just, what do you mean? I don't give a shit. Play on the iPad. I don't care.
Fucking do whatever.
Yeah, and so
super responsible adult there.
Exactly. The fact that this little girl can't wash her hands and flush the toilet makes me go, why was screen time the more important thing here? Why didn't you teach her to? But I loved M3GAN's line of just being like, Katie, seriously, flush the toilet.
Like, even this AI parental supervision robot is getting fucking annoyed by the little girl.
She was getting fed up. She was just like, seriously, flush the toilet, Katie, come on. It's like, it was good. It was funny. But yeah, actually, I really like your tagline better. Parental supervision has evolved That's yeah, I love that. So let's go with that. That's what the tagline should have been. And I say that because like instead of saying like required, I think that it, you know, implying recommended implies that something's obviously going to go wrong, very much like it does in
Yes.
the movie. So we meet Gemma. She's a engineer for a toy company. She develops toys, and the latest project that they were working on was the Purrpetual Petz, which is, you know, offshoot Furby. But she really wants to be working on M3GAN. And
Yes.
for Gemma, character wise, she came across as just very unempathetic. Like her sister died, her brother in law died, her niece is coming to live with her, and she's just kind of like, I I mean, even when they show the scene of her getting the phone call, which I think there was something goofy about that too, right? Like where the
Well,
phone call came
I was
from.
just I would make it more clear where this shit's taking place. So the whole movie is
Yeah.
shot in New Zealand. Cool.
Oh,
That's fine. Whatever.
okay.
But it supposedly takes place in Seattle. I'd never picked
Hmm.
up on that, but at the beginning of the movie, during this after the accident, she gets a call from the Oregon Medical Emergency Center.
Hmm.
So through the whole movie, I'm like, okay, so this takes place in Oregon, like in Portland or something. Cool, whatever. And then at the very end, we see and maybe I missed it on the other cars, but the the car that Megan steals has like a Washington license plate, and I was like, okay, so maybe they're in Vancouver. I mean, it doesn't fucking matter, but like, yeah, the movie takes place in Seattle. Never picked up
Location
on that.
location
Never.
wise, that's so confusing because I mean, granted, you know, I don't know, production in New Zealand might have been cheaper. Whatever they did
Yeah.
as far as
I
that
mean,
was concerned is fine, but we actually do have film studios in Portland. Like they do
well,
filming here in Portland.
if I remember, the movie was done. It was shot in 2021, kind of during lockdown or
Sure.
COVID, the big C.
Yeah.
So that probably hampered them a bit. But it's that idea, like there, where's the establishing shot showing the Space Needle? You
Yeah.
know, just something to be like, okay, this is Seattle. Got it. Good. I swear to God, the whole movie, I'm like, this is in Portland or something. And then I'm doing some research. And I'm like, oh no, it's Seattle. Fucking would never have known.
Yeah. And there's like really three standout locations that I can recall from the movie, and that was the office space where they built M3GAN, as well as
Yeah.
like where they have the product launch, uh, Gemma's home,
Yeah.
and the school that kind of looked like it was taking place at a kids camp.
Oh yeah. I was
You
like
know,
school, but yeah, no, that the day camp or whatever they went to.
yeah, I don't know, just kind of weird. But we we find that Gemma's just not very empathetic about any of this. She doesn't seem to be reacting like any normal person would about the loss of a family member, nor like even trying to comfort Katie, which immediately that's something that I feel draws your emotions into the movie and makes you want to care about what's going on, is to have that empathetic moment of like, oh, you lost your family and I lost my family, and like let's bond a little bit over this, as opposed to just being like, well, I am now your guardian, and why don't you just take this iPad and go fuck off over there while I go do my work over here, and we just
Well,
won't interact.
agreed. I mean, overall, I'd say all the kind of characterizations in the movie are a little bit flat and like one dimensional. You know,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of, I mean, it's a horror movie. Horror movies probably don't really have a lot of growth, but they should at least still have what feels like fully functional characters. They're all just a little, just bland, one note. Gemma's, super smart, driven, and doesn't know how to connect with Katie, which I got, but I think it could have been done better. Like, I agree with you. You have
Yeah.
the boss who is just an asshole.
Yeah.
You
Although
have her
Ronnie did a
friends
great job.
who serve like one purpose, and I think they're in like 3 scenes, and I thought they're going to be dead at the end, but they didn't.
Yep.
Like Katie, I thought the AI had good growth, going from a caretaker to a murderous, psychopath,
Yep.
which she has a a great line where it's all Gemma's fault because of how she implemented it. You know, she didn't give her she took a child to teach another child and didn't teach her what to do. So of course she
Yeah.
went fucking rampant.
Yeah, and there was some questionable bits about like how Megan eventually loses her cool, and it's all because Gemma just left her to her own devices to try and figure it out after the initial like construction of her
Yeah.
framework or whatever. And I was like, okay, but I mean, does that mean like you clockwork orange yourself and just witnessed all of these horrific things and now your mind is just set on protecting Katie in any way possible, which that leads into a little bit of that like the body count was lower than I expected, and I actually think the movie would have benefited from just more of that kind of
Ooh.
shenanigan.
Ooh. Yeah. Eh,
Um, namely with the fact that it this is just from my observation, which is limited based on the fact that I haven't watched a ton of horror movies, but for the most part, when they develop the characters in any given horror movie, a lot of the times they develop them in a way where one character has a bit of redeeming value to them and are most likely going to be the character that makes it through it. If it's at least to the very end, if they die too, they die, but like they'll at least make it to the end and potentially move on. Whereas everybody else gets built up in ways that are just like, I don't like you. You suck. I hope you at some point in this movie die. Like they do that in most thrillers and most horror movies where you get the sense that this person's an asshole for just the right reason that they're probably going to get killed.
Yeah.
And so you know that that's kind of the case with the boss, with David. The sidekick who David's sidekick, like his assistant, he doesn't really come across as somebody who might get offed right away until later when he's trying to steal the ideas and such behind Megan to sell to the highest bidder. Then it's like, okay, now you just signed up yourself for death because somebody's going to come along and be like, nope, you can't do that. And sure enough, Megan does. Weirdly, Megan's the one that comes along to be like, hey, you're not selling my concept to the highest bidder. You're going to die along with your boss who's already dead, but because I'm framing you guys. She had the
Yes.
forethought to frame them, and that was an interesting thing that occurred. And still, I would still have those characters die, but it wouldn't be for the same reasons.
Agreed. I like the whole scene of framing doesn't really make sense. For one, the boss gets stabbed through the back, and then the guy like cuts his throat or something. I forget how she has him kill him.
Yeah,
Whatever.
she
Just
forces him to
go.
do it to himself.
Yeah. Let's just go horror. She's murdering everybody. Just
Yeah,
own it.
exactly.
She's you know on a rampage, wanting to kill everybody to keep Katie safe.
Right. Right. So with that in mind, jumping back to the beginning a little bit here, where it's with Gemma being the way that she
It,
is,
it's the characterization of the characters. We need
yeah,
better development and we need a little less flat and one dimensional. You
right,
know, we need to understand motivation, see that they're real people with flaws instead of
exactly.
just people moving the plot along.
Yeah, and so this is where I would do the opposite. Like what I would want to do here is I would want to make her more of a empathic parental figure who is interested and cares about Katie's safety, and kind of stepping into her role as a guardian. Right, she wants to encourage growth here. She doesn't want her to be traumatized by the loss of her parents. She wants to help out, and that creates that connection that I feel like is okay, this is a survival thing now. Like we're in it to watch these two try and make it out of whatever's to come. And I feel like that builds up that characterization, but it also gives the audience, the viewer, something to care about more as well. And so with her being like, okay, I want to make sure that she's safe, I'm going to continue the development of my prototype AI, which the fact that it's a Model 3 already, I don't know if that was just a tease at like Tesla Model 3 or what, but also just the fact that it's already the third iteration. It's
Correct.
like, all right, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't, obviously, it makes sense for the name, right?
Correct, because otherwise it's not Megan, it's Megan.
Yeah, yeah. What Model 3 generative AI?
I thought it was generative android. Is
Generative
it?
Android? Let's make sure. Model 3 generative Android, you're right. Yep.
Nah, I'm good like that.
So I thought, not that I have a different name in mind here. I didn't think that far ahead on that one, but I think it's taking a little liberty there by being like, we'll put the A in for Android so that it's Megan instead of just Mega. But I mean, I don't know. Model 3 generative Android nurturer.
You're trying too hard, good sir.
Yeah.
When it comes to making an acronym work like that, you take whatever liberties you need. I mean, it's just what you do.
Yeah, it's a silly point.
Yeah.
But so she gets into making the. I would have it be more about her making this for the sake of like creating those safety protocols, creating that framework of this is what your purpose is, but also don't break these rules based on like don't harm humans in general, which is kind of, I don't know. This just came to mind, and I don't have enough of it fleshed out in my head to like speak to it a lot now. But I will say that like another way that this could have gone is that if the rules were written in, and if this was like built around the safety protocols of cannot harm a human and cannot allow a human to come to harm through inaction and all that, then it could have been all setups of different situations that caused the deaths, but Megan herself never actually did it. But I guess that would also negate the through inaction allow something to come to harm. But anyway,
Yes.
so they, with Gemma having more of a fleshed out foundation like that of being a little bit more responsible and wanting to do that, I think it would have been better. And as it stands, she's just in the moment, she's super irresponsible because
Yes.
she's just worried about developing her toy and getting it out there and making a lot of money. And I don't know, maybe they don't ever mention if this is like her retirement project. I mean, she's pretty young, but like they don't ever
Well,
mention it being that way.
I got the sense, and would probably just make it a little bit more clear. Like she just is. She needs motivation for why she's doing it, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't make it retire. She just likes to build stuff.
Yeah,
She built Bruce in college. She's now building. She built the Perpetual Pets. Now she's building Megan. She
with the
But she also
perpetual
doesn't
pets, she
think it
just,
through, is
yeah.
what I gather. That I think that kind of works in the sense that she just is trying to build something cool because she wants to. She doesn't really care about what she's supposed to do. She just wants to do it.
Oh yeah, I definitely get the impression that her building perpetual pets just feels unfulfilling, right?
Yes.
So I think that would have enhanced the story a bit more and given more of a reason for like the therapist to actually think that there was a possibility that Gemma might not be suited for her role as a parent. Like maybe she's trying, but she's doing a bad job kind of thing, but at least she's trying. Whereas in this, it just felt like not really trying. Um, when we move into the scene of meeting Megan and kind of getting our first glimpses with her, I found that to be honestly not bad. It was just how they concluded that scene with her having a malfunction because they didn't include a simple part like the it was the propylene barrier,
Something like that. Yeah.
which just sounded like some sort of a barrier that for the mask for the silicone mask that they put on her, it was, I don't know if it meant that it wasn't going to fuse to her face like it did, but that's what we get, and her head explodes as a result.
Makes
For
zero sense to me.
it's like, okay, what did that do exactly that made it so that her head just exploded? And
Correct.
I wouldn't have done that. I would have left that
Agreed.
out entirely.
Well, we need to have the scene because we need her to fail because she's spending work, money, and time trying to do this, and she needs to get on track with her actual project. I keep the scene, but I redo it. Like I'd have it be a failure of her programming or something. Because the other aspect is, because of a scene later on that like kind of gives her that extra motivation to get this done. In a week, she manages to rebuild the head, get a new silicone mask, and create M3GAN, which makes
Yeah.
zero fucking sense to me. So you keep the scene, but the failures, the AI, maybe she was doing it under her own programming initially, and that causes issues and doesn't work. And so that's why it's a failure. And then we have it where she gets the idea of, oh, I'll use generative AI, but then the name doesn't fucking work. Shit. Built myself into a fucking corner already. Yeah.
I, I still agree with you though. Like it needed to be some sort of other type of malfunction. Like it didn't need to be the head exploding and having to be rebuilt like that.
Well, maybe her name isn't M3GAN yet. It's just she doesn't have a name, or we come up with another name. Maybe. Okay. Okay. I got it. I got it to make this
Okay.
work.
All right.
Purrpetual Petz is Model 1.
Okay. Go
What
on.
we see here in this scene is the Model 2. Using Purrpetual Petz' kind of software and system, which I don't think is expressed as being AI.
Right.
And it fails. It doesn't work well going there. So we then go to the Model 3, in which she gets the idea of using generative AI and implementing that into it, creating M3GAN. And
Okay.
that's when she names it in her fucking basement at home, because she just can,
Yeah. All
she's
right.
got like the greatest fucking workshop in her house ever. But anyways,
Honestly.
yeah. So that's where we get Model 3. That's where we get M3GAN and the generative AI and why it works. Whereas the Model 2 doesn't, using Purrpetual Petz software. It just doesn't work in this kind of body and what she's trying to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on board with that. That actually that would be a fun way to kind of tackle that instead. And again, just like how that whole scene ends up with it exploding. It would have made more sense if there was like, even if it does feel a little tropish, to go back to a little bit more of a rooted robotics problem where it's like, oh yeah, there was a power surge or there was something that caused the systems to get reworked or fried in a way. Like, I'll grant you, I don't really like the whole this one chip has a very specific function, and if it gets destroyed, you're fucked kind of thing, right? I prefer the, you know, all of it's under one chip, and maybe some aspect of it, got screwed up in some fashion. That's what enabled this to kind of like shift all of a sudden. But from the very beginning, before they even put the mask on her face, you get the impression that she's already got some level of sentience that is just waiting to unlock and unleash. To have Gemma just rebuild the head and then go right back into it's the same situation. It's like, wouldn't you have done a little bit more during that montage of rebuilding her to potentially do something to safeguard things, like you would think, but no. So I'm trying to incorporate the laws of robotics in here somehow, and yet
But you can't, because if you incorporate the laws of robotics, she can't go on a murderous rampage and, kill
if the
people.
laws get screwed up through that malfunction, that's where I'm breaking that wall of like, okay, she had them, she was safe to start off with, but then something happened. Who knows? Maybe Katie threw a glass of water at her by mistake at home, and she just went.
Sir,
Zzz.
okay, sir. No, 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 no,
This movie was
no,
campy to begin with.
no. Okay, but you cannot have a fucking toy like this out in the wild that, if it gets a little wet, goes on a murderous rampage. Refuse. Fucking refuse.
But let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second, because we get into the thick of it here where M3GAN's finally coming home. Katie and her have imprinted together, and she's her fully built self now, fully realized self, and she's ready to go, right?
What is with shit needing to imprint? It's a
I don't
fucking
know.
robot. I don't know.
You remember that what was that movie called that we watched with Was it Jennifer? Yeah, it was Jennifer Lopez. It was the AI movie on
Atlas.
Netflix. Atlas, thank you. Atlas had the same concept. It was like those Titans imprinted on their pilots, right? It was the same thing, and at the end of that one too, it was the same concept of like, yeah, the android imprinted on the daughter or whatever, which was with Jennifer. Anyways, so with this whole imprinting thing, yeah, it's whatever. I mean, I honestly wouldn't have a kid imprint to a robot either. That seems irresponsible.
Unsafe.
But yeah. So we get the montage of her doing stuff with Katie and everything, and then the neighbor comes into play, and there's the whole neighbor's got issues controlling her dog, and she just seems to be kind of rude in general. There's not a lot of development there outside of just saying like Gemma and her neighbor don't get along, and there's clearly some sort of result that's going to come of this, right? And so for the fact that
Are you changing something about the neighbor?
not necessarily that as much as there was just no explanation for how M3GAN cleaned herself up after dealing with the dog and the neighbor for that matter. At one point, she peeks her head up over the fence, and there's just like twigs and shit in her hair,
After the
and her
dog
hair's a
like
mess.
fucks her up. Yeah.
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 And they never touch on, how she cleans herself up in a way that it's not like very obvious that she went out and did something malicious.
Hold on. You're confusing two scenes here though.
Am I?
Yes. So she gets all fucked up twigs in her hair when she goes to grab the arrow for Katie, and the dog grabs her and like fucking wrecks her day and then bites Katie. Then she gets cleaned up, and then we see her tricking the dog out of the yard, but never anything after that with the dog.
Okay. Well, I mean, still, there were several scenarios, including the forest chase scene, where, she probably would have gotten pretty messy, and they still just ignored that. They didn't touch that at all. Yeah.
Okay. No, I get it.
So we get to go through all that fun stuff, and I think that all of that was fine. Would have kept the the fun quippy bits. M3GAN getting annoyed with the fact that Katie just doesn't want to flush the toilet automatically for some reason. You got to teach kids that when they're younger for sure. But like, she was old enough at that point to know better.
Yes.
So,
and to wash your goddamn hands.
But of course, that was just input for for the humor of it all, right? And that was fine. When before that, when we're introduced to Bruce, that was a fine scene, I think, as far as as far as it just being like a human controlled robot. That was kind of a good foreshadowing moment, and I would have kept that just fine. I think that, to me, the gloves look like Nintendo Power Gloves, and they could have been a little more clever with that.
No, agreed. You made that comment, and I was like, I thought they'd actually used Nintendo Power Gloves, so I had to go like verify that. That would have been hilarious if they had.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned, like, I have an issue with that scene, and I would change that because it doesn't make sense that she built this fucking in college. I mean, this is a seriously advanced piece of like technology that the feeling I get from the scene is she built it fucking in her dorm room, running down to the Radio Shack or Home Depot.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Not Home Depot, but yeah.
You never know. You can get some stuff at Home Depot.
Maybe the metal parts, maybe the piping or whatever else.
Great. But I would change it. I would have this, like, it doesn't matter that she did this in college or not. She's a very intelligent woman. I would have this be like her first real project getting into robotics for the first company she worked for. It was the first prototype she had done, and just to kind of get a little bit more characterization, a little bit more of that empathetic nature we're talking about. So have it be this was like her first project. coming out of college for some big company. She loved it. She loved getting into it, learning. And then, her sister has a child, and that's what prompts her to go work for Funky to, I think it was called Funky, wasn't it? Yeah, it
Yep.
was Funky. Yeah.
Yep. Because it's
To,
like Funko, but with an eye.
correct. To, build something that giving the implication she leaves to go build something and work on stuff that would that her eventual niece would get to play with. That gives that
Right.
little empathetic characterization of she wants, even back then she wanted to connect, and that's why she went down this route versus building some big robot that isn't so fun to play with, so to speak.
Yeah, and when Katie sees Bruce and gets to interact with it for a moment, she has that line that's basically the catalyst of the movie. If I had a toy like Bruce, I'd never need another toy.
Toy's not a fucking, or Bruce is not a fucking toy.
No, no, he is
Jesus.
not a toy. But in the vein of that line and everything, like it is a interesting point to kick off Gemma's desire to finish the thing, but I would have still, again, just I would have changed her dynamic overall to be more like, oh, I'm going to do this for the sake of Katie, not to do something that will make it so that Katie doesn't like her thought process, at least as far as my view of it was concerned, is that her thought process was to say, if this is the last toy she'll ever need, I could give something like this to her and then she won't never need me to entertain her.
Yes, that
It,
felt like her thought process.
it feels like a strong detachment to just wanting to be a parent. And I guess like with the therapist and everything and how it does come across pretty early on that the therapist is like there to observe whether or not she's a good fit. That's fine. I thought the therapist came off a little odd though, especially with respecting boundaries. And that's just because I take a little issue with
Well,
if a collectible is a collectible, you don't mess with a collectible. So don't give her a hard time when Katie's like, "Oh, I don't play with these toys because they're collectibles." It's like, yeah, they're fucking collectibles. Leave them alone. There's value there. There's money there that's not meant to be like destroyed. So the
I,
therapist had some
the
oddities.
therapist felt like she was antagonistic. Like
Yeah.
she was hired by, I got the sense that she was hired by the parents in Florida to find any reason for Gemma not to be a good fit, so Katie would go live with them in Florida.
Yeah,
And
the
honestly, I
brother-in-law's
probably would,
parents.
yes,
Right.
probably would have been a better, idea for Katie because, wouldn't have had the murderous robot show up.
Yeah, in fact, that robot may never have been finished. It might have the
Yeah,
project might have died, or some other form of massacre would have happened. Either way,
who knows? We wouldn't have
but
had the movie. So we
yeah,
digress.
for sure.
So, what are some of the
Listen,
next changes you're thinking?
so for uh, hmm, yeah, I mean, for the film from here kind of kicks off into its slasher bits, right? It goes from we see the first interaction of Megan getting uh the experience of Katie being like dealing with danger with the dog, with later on the kid in at school and how he came off super awkward and weird as far as the doll went. I won't get into that, but I would have done that. I wouldn't have had the kid come off so. There's not really a better way to put this other than rapey. Yeah. So, because at one point he pushes Megan over and then he straddles her, and I'm just like, "What are you doing, kid? Like this is weird."
So are
But
you
if
you're not, you don't like
I
it, but you're not changing it?
no, I would change that. I would
Okay.
absolutely. I would just have him be the antagonistic bully that's like trying to slap Megan around to get her to react to him. But I wouldn't have like, yeah, the pushing her over and straddling her just felt really weird. And so I would have left that out and just stuck to him like, continue to pick up a stick and start poking at her or something, like things that would drive Megan mad enough to do what she did anyways without it really being like that awkward moment. Um the slasher portion of it kicks in from there. She chases down the kid, kills him, and then it just goes in that direction. And I would have included some of the more um, original body count aspects of what they talk about in an original cut that they had done, that they had toned down for this. It's like the therapist would have died as a result of making Katie cry. Honestly, I think even Gemma could have stood the risk of getting killed as well, but maybe I don't recall there being any kind of um despite her being kind of the pseudo user, the administrator user of M3GAN. At one point M3GAN's like, "Oh, I've created my own administrator user now," essentially. Like, she became her own
Yeah.
pseudo user. And I think that would have allowed for the potential for, like, Gemma to get bit too. I haven't decided on that one particular part of whether or not I would have killed her off or not. But if it were to go that direction, if I were to take it in that down that path, I would say that that would be a good lead up to her going to her grandparents, I guess. Yeah, because it's
Sure.
the
Okay.
brother-in-law's parents.
You're this kid's parents died in a horrific car accident, and then you're going to have M3GAN kill Gemma.
I mean, she made some mistakes along the way that feels like it would be the normal mistakes that would cause her to go in a slasher.
Okay. I'm just getting clarity.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this child is going to be fucking traumatized.
I mean, if she isn't already, just by the acts of what this doll has done, on top of the fact that, like, she became hyper obsessed. So even it, like, I would say that in the end, it would be kind of like a tit for tat. It would be Gemma and M3GAN both finishing each other off, kind of thing. And yeah, of course, it's highly traumatic, but if that's kind of the point, right? Is there's not necessarily going to be a happy ending here, especially since we know as of January 2023, yeah, it was shortly after the movie was released that they announced that there was a sequel already slated. We're getting M3GAN 2.0 in 2025, which I kind of hope they rework that title, because Model 3 version 2.
Yeah, don't worry about it. There's also a spin-off called Soulmate.
Tell me more. I didn't see that.
That's all I've been able to find about it so far.
Interesting.
And you're going to love this. So it's Soulmate, Soul M8, number 8 TE. So, Model 8.
No, I don't like that. Don't like that.
Yeah, I know. I figured you really like that.
I thought you were gonna say like M@7.
No, we're not going fucking leet speak on the shit.
Yeah, I mean, they really can't. There's not a lot of folks out there that would be like, oh, that's what that means, right? So between that, I mean, so the neighbor still bites the dust same way. Didn't really feel a need to change that at all. The dog going out, I would have kept that the same, because they don't. It's just alluded to. You don't actually see what happens to the dog, so that would have been, if you're gonna kill an animal in a movie, I really think it needs to happen off screen every 100% of the time. The bosses, I still would have had, like, instead of it being about the product launch, I would have taken it in the direction of M3GAN is now taking care of Katie, and Gemma's there still doing her work, whatever else. But then it becomes more of like your classic horror thriller of being chased around the house, dealing with all of that. I still would have I would have taken that scene later where M3GAN confronts Gemma and had that whole bit in the kitchen where she threatens Gemma and's like, if Katie comes in here, I'll rip your fucking head off. And have that be just earlier in the movie, and there being like some level of
how much earlier?
Honestly, like Okay, sorry. Let me back up here and say like this is how I would change the whole latter act of the movie is that
Okay.
with the fact that in the original cut the therapist was slated to die, I would have it be where they are in the weird demo room of Megan's where Katie's having a random therapy session for whatever reason. That, you know what, that part's fine. I'll leave it. I don't really care to try and like rework the scene so that it happens somewhere else. Right? It makes more sense in this instance to have this occur here because the therapist makes Katie cry. Megan steps in, murders the therapist with the scissors that Katie would have otherwise used because Katie picked up those scissors like she was about to murder the therapist herself for some reason. And then um, Gemma runs in, gets Katie, runs away, like just fucking books it out of there, back to the house, whatever. And Megan goes on her in office rampage, kills both of Gemma's partners because they were in the behind the glass room. So we get the extra 2 kill counts there because they're just not accessories, collateral for being part of the creation process, right? So because they happen to be involved with it, they don't make it, right? And so some sort of wild and crazy death that occurs based on some sort of utilities found either in the room or in the breaking through the glass and then maybe using the glass or something like that. And then she goes and kills the boss and his lackey, his assistant. She takes care of that, and then she flees the building and starts to head back. At that point, Katie's probably aware. So I guess the scene with Gemma may not make sense anymore. But that is actually where my original head was at, as far as like how I would turn this into a larger body count slasher. So maybe that can still occur prior to this therapist visit as like an opportunity for that to establish that Gemma knows that Megan's bad, but she can't do anything about it yet. And then the murder happens in the room, and then it cascades from there. And at that point, Gemma's like, okay, I can react to this now because Katie knows, and there's nothing that that can be done. And maybe there's like some sort of like evil monologue for a second where Megan tells Katie why she's doing what she's doing before her and Gemma escape, and then the rampage starts. So you still get the rest of that body count there, and then it turns into a chase around the house. They're trying to escape Megan as Megan's trying to come save Katie from Gemma, and it leads up to what could eventually be that really dark ending that I've decided on of Gemma and Megan killing each other simultaneously before Katie gets taken away by the police and then sent to her parents in Florida, far, far away from the Pacific Northwest where all of this unfolded. And that's my story.
And you're sticking to it.
I'm going to stick to it, yeah.
Okay.
Katie would, or maybe it also still like the whole Bruce, fucking up Megan too. Like that was still a fun bit. I would have tried to have Katie still do something with it. That was fun when she walks in and she's like, "But I got these."
I want to know how she got this. See, I enjoyed the scene, but it was also like she suddenly shows up and she has the gloves. Like, why? Why the fuck does she have the? How did she get the gloves? The gloves were supposed to be in the room. Makes zero sense. But we'll roll moment with it. But I am going to, how do I be polite? I'm gonna take some of your idea of Gemma dying, because let's fucking traumatize this little girl even more and set up the sequel in Florida. So yeah, I would have the final scene kind of play out, but in the end, I would have Megan kill Gemma before she's finally defeated with like Katie and Bruce. Okay, just that way she's dead, she's traumatized. And then we continue with that whole idea that Megan has probably uploaded herself to Elise. the
Yep.
little like sentient
Elsie.
Elsie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Katie, goes to live with her grandparents in Florida because everyone else is dead.
And then
And then the
Elsie.
sequel takes place in, my assumption is somehow, because this is usually how it would go, the military is like, ooh, this might be cool technology, and, rebuilds it. And Megan uploads herself into the new body and then goes to Florida to find Katie.
Yeah.
And, let's have part of it take place at like Disney World, just murdering people. Ooh, she uploads herself to the animatronics at Disney World. And it's just fucking a scene of like, fucking Small World and Presidents just going
Oh
wild,
man.
murdering people.
You imagine she uploads her consciousness to the net and then manages to replicate herself in a way where she could take over. Like, that could be a movie in and of itself, where it's just like she manages to take over all the animatronics that are set up at like theme parks and whatever else, and then there's just like this full-on massacre of android. This is the beginning of Terminator, dog.
Yeah, Megan 3.0 is essentially Terminator. Like, Megan has become Skynet.
Yeah, this just leads right
fucking
into
what
that.
we're doing. Yeah. This is the end of human civilization because of fucking Gemma being unable to connect with the little girl and needing a robot to do it all for her.
I love it so much. I actually really love that.
Yeah.
Have this somehow just tie into the Terminator universe or something. Oh my god.
That's what we're doing.
It's better, and this was one other thing that I think you saw in the trivia, is that there was and I actually saw a snippet as well, that this was a little bit crossed over with Chucky.
Yeah, they've had like little homages to each other,
right, and
which is fun.
It's fun. I will counter the one point of that. I think the crossover with Terminator is better than the crossover with Chucky. And the only reason I say that is because Megan is technology. She is AI, and it's AI gone rogue. That totally feasible. Chucky is based on the concept of a serial killer spirit possessed doll.
Yeah.
It's supernatural. There's not really anything supernatural about Megan as much as it is just like futuristic.
Maybe we find out that AI is not really AI and it's soul stuck in computers. Which reminds me of that just made me think of a 90s movie about a serial killer that gets stuck in computer coder, and not Lawnmower Man. Yeah, Ghost in the Machine.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yep. I am familiar. It's been a long time.
93. It was really bad.
Yeah. That was one of those movies that just kind of got put on for whatever reason, and anyway, I think that the whole Chucky crossover, it'll be fun if they do it, but I just don't think it makes sense.
It doesn't. But I'm open to this. But no, I like it's not really a Terminator crossover, but yeah, we're going Terminator with this route. Megan 2.0 takes over all animatronics. Megan 3.0, she's become Skynet. Ooh, and we end with her unveiling the T100 or whatever.
Oh my gosh, that actually would be pretty funny. Like, if all of a sudden it just all like came together like that.
Yes.
But I mean, either way, in my head, I'm just imagining this idea of like all of these animatronics, all of these different, android capable bots that have some sort of memory in their heads that allows them to be overwritten so that they can actually become, evil, malicious. They start just running amok, and the way that whole thing could come to an end, all of it, like grand scheme, series arc, whatever. Humanity has to EMP the planet, and it sets them back to like the before times. Before technology, because no technology works anymore after the pulse.
Yeah, but
but then it's like it leaves you with that feeling of hopelessness, because at that point you're like, oh great, so humanity won, but at what cost?
let's see. I don't know. I'm very conflicted here. Like, it's not bad, but going super dark in the sense that they try, but we become so reliant on technology and the interconnectedness of everything, the IoT,
Yeah.
Internet of Things,
Yeah.
that before they can even just set off the EMP blast, like she has uploaded herself to like Starlink and everything else, and she just has full control.
She's got stuff going on in the ISS. She's transmitting out into far space, and we
She's
find out that
everywhere.
there's a whole planet of cyborgs, and
She's just everywhere.
this has the
Hopeless.
potential to expand into all kinds of different things.
I love it. I love it.
Honestly, that would be pretty much the entirety of what I would do. I mean, this has potential to be a more interesting story in a different direction. But for the sake of watching a movie like this, you know what, folks? If you haven't already, I recommend it. It was
Yeah.
actually fun. It's silly. There's a weird dance scene in the middle of it. Megan also
Yeah.
sings two
She
songs
sings
very
a couple
randomly.
times. Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
very creepy, but that's the point. It's supposed to be creepy. Also, when she runs through the forest, that was creepy as well.
oh yeah, the whole like
Yeah.
I'm doing the reverse version of that, like you see in The Grudge and shit. But like, no, I'm thinking, yeah, it was like all
Yeah. She
like
drops to all fours
dog
and
mode,
like,
and she's just like,
yeah,
"Rah, rah, rah,
just
rah, rah."
she just scampers.
It's so weird. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, I'd say definitely give it a watch. It's fun. It's just silly fun.
I would agree.
Is there anything else you got, bud?
No, I think we covered it all.
Sweet.
I
Yeah.
love the direction. We're gonna end with the with humanity just losing.
Yeah.
We're
In the
or
extended universe.
it's either Terminator or it's Matrix. Either way, everyone's fucked. Megan's gonna rule the world.
Yep, exactly. Well, yeah, if that's the case, then I'm good as well. So on that note, I think we can wrap this up.
Let's sign off, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this week on another episode of We're Too Literary.
And like we said, if you haven't watched Megan yet, we do highly recommend it. Go do it. Then come back, leave us a comment. Let us know if you agree with the changes we did, if you think we're off base and it's perfect as is, or if you got your own ideas you'd like to share. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and don't forget, you can all find us on all the major podcast platforms, and of course, right here on YouTube. So please, leave us a comment if you're listening in. Give our show a rating, and if you're watching, don't also forget to like and subscribe. We'd really love to spread this around and get this to everybody.
Yes, we would. We really appreciate you being here with us, exploring this movie, listening to us share our takes.
So thank you so much for tuning in to We're Too Literary this week. I've been your host, Kenny.
And I'm Jonathan.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye now.